Welcome in to 11 Personnel presented by our friends at Monticello Bank. Monticello Bank, they go wherever the Wildcats fans go with their Go NBC mobile app, bank at home or at the game, or if you need to come see us, they're right around the corner. 21 locations across the Commonwealth for over 128 years. Monticello Bank, it's where the people matter. It means competitive loans, deposit rates, as well as a wide variety of customer-focused financial services, making your life a little easier. Stop by. Visit mbcbank.com today. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Big shout out to our friends at Monticello Bank for making this happen. I'm Nick Roush. He's Adam Luckett. And a big shout out to tonight's guest, Roger Sherman, where he's going to talk football. I know a lot of you here want to hear about Eric Wolford, and you have takes. We've got we've got we got a lot to get to later, Luckett, but we're going to have some fun first because the guy with the Western shirt and the Tulane hat's here. So we got to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. Roger took on an experiment this season, Nick, that me and you talk about doing just on a smaller scale, just like going to a bunch of games one weekend, but he did it for an entire season. So very interested to just what are the takeaways? What are like the boots on the ground takeaways from some of these places he went to?
I just was following the whole time. So Roger, thank you for joining us. You're crazy, and we love it. I was watching the whole time, just like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. So, but first things first, are you crazy? Like what?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I quit my job and went to 62 college football games. I don't think, I don't think, like, I don't know what definitions you use for sanity, but that's not a good idea. It's definitely not a good idea or a
Well,
smart thing to do.
you're
But
in
I
the
had a great
content
time.
game. Did you try
Yeah.
to double dip it and be like, hey, I'll go to all these games and write about them? Did you try to float that idea out there to the bosses at all? Or were you just like, screw it, I'm gonna hit the road running?
I'm I'm going to write some stuff. I'm trying to write a book about it. I put out my own YouTube videos and stuff about it. I didn't get to do as much of it because I was driving like pretty much all day every day. So I didn't actually get to like make all the videos and write all the stuff I wanted to. But yeah, it's a pretty tough sell to anybody. It was a tough sell to my company. It was a tough sell to my wife. My dogs don't speak English, but it was a tough sell to them. You know, my parents, anyone I talked to was pretty confused, but ultimately supportive. And yeah, that I think, and the important thing is that I survived. I'm alive. I drove to 43 states and came out the other side.
What was the mileage counter for the full trip?
So I'm still working on figuring that out because my rental car company made me switch cars a couple times, and I like it's one of these things that's on my to-do list, but I just don't feel like doing math. But I
Yeah.
think it's somewhere between like 38 and 42,000 miles. It's like 40,000 miles in 4 months,
I,
and that's too much. That's too many miles.
The
see,
7 hour trip to South Carolina, Nick, is too long for us. That
yeah,
one has me itching. I couldn't imagine nonstop, just
I
going and
kind of
going and
I kind
going.
of did that every day. Yeah.
Right.
it, so for me, I just first nightmare scenario is just like explaining to my wife, yeah, I'm just gonna go drive. That alone, you survive that. That speaks for itself. So once you hit the ground running, like, I mean, yeah, honey, I got to go see the rocket that's pointed at Bowling Green because that was
Yeah, that's there. It's
so.
Toledo.
That's like I love that fun fact. It's one of my favorite fun facts that I learned throughout your trip. That Toledo literally points their rocket at their rival Bowling Green. So what were some of the things you learned that you're just like this might be useless trivia, but it's sticking with me forever?
That's a great. It's like every place has a thing, you know. Like every place has a thing they want to tell you about. So I probably have at least 62 pieces of of random trivia. I'll start with Western.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the white squirrels. They have white squirrels there, albino squirrels. And I was just walking through the campus when I got there, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that these existed. I had seen pictures of them, but I sort of believed I didn't know they were specific to Bowling Green, Kentucky. and I sort of didn't believe they were real. And then they were, and they were scurrying around doing squirrel stuff. Um, so that's, but the thing about college football and college basketball and just college sports in general is people just have like this um, this connection to it that I don't think exists to the same extent with pro sports. And they all have their fun facts, and they all have their reasons why our school is better than the other school. Um, you know, I didn't make it out to Kentucky. I went to a Louisville game, and just hearing their opinions about the University of Kentucky, and not necessarily believing all of them, but I would also like to hear your opinions about Louisville, and and then I'll have the full picture.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions because I didn't know if you found the drunkest fan base in America and why it's Louisville. I hope you showed up early enough to get the half price beers on the party deck because they're a fan base. They like to have fun.
See that. Yeah, I did see that
Yeah.
because I got there before one of the Thursday night games, and like they just had some regular beer, some like regular prices before the
Yeah.
game started. And normally, you go to stadiums and it's like $12 for a beer at like some of the stadiums around the country. So I was happy to see that. I did need to drive after that game, so I didn't get too into it. But yeah, I mean, feels like there is alcohol in the state of Kentucky.
Yep.
Yeah, just a smidge.
We rejoiced when we finally, the athletic director finally made Kroger Field wet. Was it? I guess this was the first year that we got beer at the stadium.
It was.
So
Yeah.
that was a significant milestone for us personally. But I mentioned the MAC off the top because that's part of that's the one that we really like. It's like a problem that we're like, oh, we're gonna do this, and then it gets to November, and then basketball season's happening, and then like you don't even have enough time to. Your just wheels are spinning, right? It's the end of the
Uh-huh.
season, and it's like, can I make a trip Tuesday night to Bowling Green to watch a game in the snow? So you had, like you said, the schedule. It kind of sets up where you kind of got to go to a bunch of MAC games if you're going to do all these
Yeah.
football games. So your MACtion review, can you just shed a little insight on what we could potentially expect and what should be what stadium should we prioritize from the MAC?
So it's so strange because like it's very clearly for television.
Yeah.
The entire idea behind Maction is we are going to play our games such that they will be on ESPN. We'll do it on Tuesday and Wednesday nights to make sure that it's the only thing on TV. And it just sucks for all of the fans. These are already schools of pretty small fan bases. And you're playing the game on a Tuesday night in November in Michigan. It is freezing. All the fans are like, we prefer it when the games are on Saturdays. So I saw some empty stadiums. The cool thing was I also saw a couple of rivalry games, and I went to Western versus Central Michigan, Western Michigan versus Central Michigan, not Western Kentucky. And like you said, Toledo and Bowling Green, you brought that up. You're a Toledo versus Bowling Green enthusiast. And those games were actually like pretty full and like pretty rowdy. So I guess it doesn't matter if there's a legit rivalry. It doesn't matter what time or what the weather is. People will show up for it. And if there's not, no one will be there. No one will show up. Probably the closest one to you guys, I'm guessing, would be like Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, that'd be the
Yeah.
closest.
And
That's only
they
a
had
3-hour drive.
they had their stadium is like pretty beautiful. They clearly put some money into it and just entirely empty. So if you and your friends want to go hop in a car and do something stupid, I kind of recommend it because like you can just walk, you can just be as close as you want to a live college football game for like $10 to $15 a person. Do whatever you want there. They had a deck right behind one of the end zones where they were selling beer, and you could play cornhole throughout the game. So I got in some games of cornhole with 3 of the other 97 attendees of the game, and like, not to pick on any of them. It was just it 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 stood out to me as like, oh, even at the least attended game you go to all season, and their team was good.
Yeah.
They either won or made the MAC championship. The
Yeah,
funny
they
thing
won
is,
it. They won it.
I don't actually know what happened in college football this year because I went to all the college football games. It's weird, but like, yeah, no, that was a good time, even though it was totally empty. So go find an action game. It'll be fun. Just go with people you like and don't expect it to be like a crazy atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right.
You have
Yeah.
to bring the energy. They're not going to
Well,
bring it for you.
Miami's got Brick Street. It's a scenic. It's a pretty campus, and yeah, like you said,
Yeah.
it's not too far from here. We're big Chris Creighton, the Factory fans.
Yeah.
That place looks like you got to love football to want to play at Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, and it's like 5 miles from the big house in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
It's like literally in the shadow of the largest stadium around, and yeah, I feel bad for Eastern. I went to their bowl game in Mobile, Alabama, where they
Great
lost
game.
59
was
to
it?
10.
No, that was the one where the dude got rocked at the end.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
mixing that up with Birmingham, but yeah.
I was on the field, and just all of a sudden everybody started running, and I was like, okay, I was busy making like, oh, it's cool that they won a bowl game content, like filming them doing the Gatorade dump and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden everyone is pushing and shoving. And I didn't exactly see that the dude fucking dome. Oh, my.
Yeah,
Right.
you're good. You're good.
I didn't see that it just right in the back of the head. I didn't know what had happened. I just got in the middle of a bunch of much larger people than me shoving each other.
Oh man, that's
Was there a team, Roger, that you just like, I'm seeing this team again? Like, how does this team keep coming up in the rotation?
So honestly, I didn't mean to see 2 Louisville games. They just played a lot of weeknight games.
Yeah.
I was saying this before we went on air. Like, you kind of have to track down the weeknight games if you're getting your numbers up. So that's why I was at Louisville and Western, but not UK. So apologies
Right.
to the Wildcats community about that. I'll make it up to you somehow. I'll go see a basketball game there Sunday for sure. But yeah, there was, and then I accidentally saw 3 Cincinnati games in a row.
Oh man, bad Cincinnati team too. Yeah.
Scott Satterfield.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and it wasn't intentional at all. I saw them play at Cincinnati intentionally because it was their first Big 12 game, and then the next week I saw them play at BYU. I wasn't planning on following them around the country. They weren't very good.
Is BYU as beautiful as it looks on television?
It really is. It really is. I got there, and nice to contrast them with the drunkest fan base and the least drunk fan base in college football. Got to see them both in a couple weeks. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a huge mountains enthusiast. If there are mountains, I don't actually like climbing the mountains. I like looking at them. Got to go to both Utah and BYU this year, and yeah, it hits. I went there as like the leaves on the trees were changing colors, and like the hills were just like red and white, and it was, oh man, yeah, it's a beautiful and very strange place.
Was there a place or two where you, I don't know, not necessarily low expectations, but you went there and you were like really impressed with maybe the atmosphere, just the environment that was maybe you think's underrated nationally?
The first time I got asked this question, I like scratched my head for 45 seconds, but now I have an answer locked in.
Oh, nice.
It's Appalachian State. I had an awesome time up in Boone, North Carolina, and they played on a Tuesday, and like I said, I went to some real dismal Tuesday night games, and they did not care down there at App State. They were the whole. I feel like the entire western half of North Carolina showed up into that tiny, beautiful stadium in the mountains, and just did a very rowdy Tuesday night football game.
Well, to get to maybe the off, because we love Tuesday, Wednesday night football. That's kind of our like, because like you said, when you go to the games on Saturday, you don't get to watch them all. Like you're there.
Yeah, yeah.
So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Oh, love me some Thursday night football. But what is when you went to the big games, right? And you had plenty on there. You even had the national championship on there, which I have a question about. But is there a you don't not even necessarily one, but who's really set themselves apart at the top of the college football pecking orders in terms of like game day atmosphere for big games?
I had an incredible time at LSU. I think that's a pretty standard answer, but it really
Yeah.
is.
Nothing else like it.
There, and you've done road games there.
Yeah, we've done
Yeah,
one.
we
It's been a
did one
while,
there.
but yeah.
In Kentucky, you lost by like 60, but it was so cool.
Was it noon or was it night?
Night. It was the
It was
night.
night.
Game. So we got the call in
Yeah.
Baton Rouge before the game, and
Yeah.
as the sun's going down and they're getting more lit up. Yeah, it was awesome.
That's. I would recommend the next time that comes up in the rotation, which will probably be in the next 30 years, that you guys have them on the schedule. That's a all timer. My best atmosphere I had on the trip, I'll still say, Oklahoma, Texas at the Cotton Bowl,
Yeah.
the Red River game.
That's a bucket list. Like,
that was beautiful. Had a surprising time. Probably falls into the surprising, but also a big game category. Was at Washington. I mean, I'm sure it was partially because they were 11-0, but beautiful location and extremely loud fan base. And I don't know, for some reason I wasn't sure how big of a fan base that was going to be. I know there's lots of stuff in Seattle. They have an NFL team, but I had a great time at the Apple Cup against Washington State. So I'm throwing those three out there as my nominees in this category. And the thing is, I still need to go to so many other places. Like, I went to 62 games, and there's still so many more that I want to see, which is stupid. But
I'm just really glad you didn't say Neyland Stadium. That place sucks. It's it's basically the seventh circle of hell.
I didn't make it to.
Good. You're not missing anything. Just play Rocky Top over and over, and you get the picture. I do digress a little bit because you mentioned the bowl games, and you got that. We're also big bowl fans too, because bowl games, it's free football, it's silly.
Or Tuesdays.
And it's like Tuesdays in the afternoon, and this sport is very silly, and like bowl seasons, it's like we're gonna not even try to take ourselves seriously at all. So we're just gonna shove Cheez-Its and Pop-Tarts at you. Was the Pop-Tart good? Did the mascot was it a good experience to eat a mascot?
Like so it actually was, because you can tell it was obviously, because it was so much larger than a generic Pop-Tart, the mascot that was cooked and eaten, toasted and eaten. It was like they had to do it at a different scale. I think there was a little bit more of like a cakiness to it than a regular Pop-Tart. Like it I think, because I'm guessing what happened was they had to go to like a baker in the Orlando region and say, hey, can you make us a really large cake with this? I don't know how they did it, but it was more cake adjacent than you'd expect a Pop-Tart to be, the giant one that everyone ate at the end. And it was like really strange. I was down there in the mix of all of the Kansas State football players, like scooping up big chunks of it and throwing it to each other. And like the field was a disaster after that. Like there were, like, imagine like just pop, like, all right, picture you drop a Pop-Tart on the floor of your house and you step on it, and think about how much of a disaster that would be if you have like a carpet or something. And now imagine that on a grand scale. with not only more Pop Tart but also more people like because like the players were just walking on fallen Pop Tart, like it was getting stuck in their cleats. It was a very sticky environment. Like it was not a good situation. It was
Oh.
the taste itself was good. It was very unhygienic because you like it was also being scooped primarily by players with their like gloves on. You know,
We're
like
sweating after playing all
Yeah.
yeah,
game.
they've
Just
been touching like I mean, think of like those like offensive linemen who have like their hands are super taped up and they're shoving people for 3 hours, and they don't like, and then they're just grabbing huge chunks of fake Pop Tart, and like then I ate a little bit of it, and like I don't know, there's definitely not great food safety going on.
was that the most surreal moment? Like what am I doing here? How many of those moments did you have where you just kind of look around and like, yeah, I'm what
Um, pretty
what is my
much
life right now?
pretty much every day. You know, when you're driving about 8 hours a day, you have a lot of "what am I doing" moments. But um, I mean, the surreal part for me is like every time I went to a game, it was like you're kind of living this great experience that other people look forward to. You know, people build their whole weeks, months, lives around this big game, and I'm doing it every day for 3 or 4 months. You know, seeing all these huge rivalry games and these moments that people are going to be talking about. They're shooting out confetti after the championship game, and you're kind of just wandering through it, even though it's not your big moment. You're seeing the big moments that everyone else has been looking forward to. That I probably took that in another direction, but like that to me is what I was like,
Wow.
what is this? It's magical and strange, and then sometimes a guy in a Pop Tart suit shoves a Pop Tart into your face.
Well,
Only
Lucky,
college football.
I'll pass you the mic, but I wanted one more big question because it came up, and I don't know if it necessarily needs to be the Rose Bowl, but I just something about Houston. Maybe it's because Kentucky lost the Final Four there, and it's just big and cavernous. But it's just there's nothing about Houston's football stadium that screams to me
Yeah,
college football. So, what was it like watching a national championship in a pro stadium? And are you a believer that it needs more of a college football venue, even if it is like some for some reason I think of the Falcon Stadium more as the SEC championship game stadium than
yes,
the
yeah.
Falcon Stadium. You
I
know?
wonder why. I wonder why the Falcons haven't distinguished themselves in that regard. Um, yeah, it's I I I've done national championship games before at my job at the Ringer. They would send me to cover them, and they really do feel always like NFL. Like it doesn't. It was probably one of the games, even though I'm very glad I made it and I finished the trip there. It wasn't like something I was super looking forward to because I really wanted to see all the campuses and all the people and all the
Mm-hmm.
like things that are different as opposed to the national championship game, which their goal is to make it kind of the same every time, but in different places. It's got what they do is they take this NFL stadium that probably has Texans or Falcons or 49ers logos everywhere, and they slap the black and gold college football playoff logo on it. And yeah, it does feel unusual that that's the way we finish our season. And it sort of doesn't matter though, because when you have a thing like Michigan winning for the first time in infinity years, they brought enough of the energy to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I did feel like I was at a college football game a lot more at the FCS championship the day before in Frisco, Texas, between Montana and South Dakota State. Um, it was just a strange day. It was also you probably don't know this because I don't know what they showed in the TV broadcast, but it was like howling winds and rain that day. there were like 40-mile-an-hour gusts of wind in Houston. So there was nobody really tailgating outside because everyone was like seeking shelter. Um, like I walked up to the gate of the stadium and there were just so many abandoned 12 packs of beer on the ground because people were like, I brought this beer to have a good time before the game and then needed to avoid the lightning and wind, and they ran inside. So it definitely didn't have much of a college football atmosphere.
Yeah, that is it's just strange that that's kind of the system, but it is the system. Roger, for anyone going on a road trip, you're like the road trip master now, just for driving. Do you have any tips? Like if someone was going to go on a cross country road trip, what do you need to do? What are the checkpoints you have to hit? What road snacks were your go to?
Ooh, that's a good one.
A
Yeah.
lot of great questions. I think the most important thing is um, bathroom discipline. Know which gas stations have the good bathrooms.
Yep.
You know, Big Love's travel stop guy. If the Buckies in the South always work, I don't know. I
Oh
think they
yeah.
have one in Kentucky.
Yeah. We're building a second one
Yes.
too. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
65's getting one.
you know, and what I mean by bathroom discipline is like, you know, really time up those trips, right? I don't, I wouldn't like drink water if I had like a lot of road ahead. I definitely would not drink coffee if I had a lot of road ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Snacks, I think that was the hardest part because I was on the road for 4 months and everyone has good food at tailgates. And everyone's always like, oh, when you come here, you have to go to this barbecue place. So I tried to be pretty like casual on the snacks because like if you just eat tailgate food and barbecue for 4 months, you're gonna die. So I had some granola and turkey jerky. I would like go to Costco and get like just bulk amounts of non-perishable healthy snacks, and that was the way to go. And it wasn't fun. Um, uh, yeah, no, my I would say the most important thing is is making sure you
Yeah.
don't get stuck in a bad gas station bathroom.
That's good advice. We all can adhere to. Is there any
Everybody
part of the
poops.
country
That's right.
too that you hadn't seen before that you're like, oh, this kind of rocks?
Most of them, but the two that stood out were Montana and like uh, the Appalachian region. I never really,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I had been through that part of the country, but like you know, West Virginia, Kentucky, the part of North Carolina that App State is in, Eastern Tennessee, I just thought was beautiful. Um, and especially like if you're driving, it's not like you are like climbing over the Rockies. It was just very pleasant and beautiful, and there's good food and there's good people. And I'm not pandering because I'm sure some of the people listening to this are from that part of the country. I really enjoyed that sort of Pennsylvania on down through Tennessee area of the country, and spent a lot of time driving through it just because of the nature of how many college football games were being played in that part of the country. So that's my winner. And going through there, especially when the leaves were changing in October and November, was
Hmm. Chef's kiss. Chef's kiss.
that's
Well, we
that was not just that was the type of kiss that was. Chefs are the only ones that do that.
we enjoyed following along, living vicariously through you. It was fun. I'm sure. Have you come back down to earth yet? Like, are you rested? Are you normal? Are you a normal human?
Definitely not normal. My plan is to start writing sometime soon, and I just haven't. I'm just not back on schedule yet. I'm still staying up late and sleeping late, and I think it's still carryover from all the driving. But we will. If I will eventually get back to being a functional part of the sports media ecosystem.
Well,
Well,
if
whenever
you
you do get that book finished,
yeah,
we You'll have 2 buyers right here for sure. We look
Yeah.
forward to checking that
We'll
out.
Awesome.
be happy to pimp
I'm
it up.
writing that down and I'm sending it to whatever literary agents are listening. If you're on YouTube right now, which people are, right? This is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, we are live.
It's Road Raj on YouTube. Go over to this part of the screen and click over there, and I'll be posting videos there pretty soon.
Awesome. And that's also, I think, where you can find out what Big Red is. I've been to many of Western Kentucky football games. Never knew what Big Red is, and your investigative journalism, you solved it. So thank you for your service. You're really doing the field of journalism.
I was really disappointed when someone had an actual answer for the question. That was the worst part. I was asking people thinking they would have, just, oh, he's a Big Red thing. And most of them said that. But then one girl actually informed me of what Big Red is. And I was devastated.
What
I
a
was
know-it-all.
devastated.
Yeah, you smarty pants. Oh, well, Raj, it's been a joy. It's been a pleasure. We appreciate you coming on. And good luck writing that. I'm sure that's going to be that's been a later problem that you've been pushing off for so long. That's going to suck to get going. So it's very
awful.
relatable.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And when I figure out how to do a college basketball one, I'll be at Rupp for sure.
Sounds good. Roger Sherman, ladies and gentlemen. Roger Sherman.
Thanks, Raj.
That was a pleasure. Like it. I think this is how. Oh, I hit the button to get us back on. That was cool.
You're impressive.
Look at me, knowing all the buttons, how to use everything, knowing how to refocus this program here with our friends at Refocus Fitness. You've heard us talking about them. It's the 24-hour gym that's open 7 days a week where you can get any time. You don't have to be bugged. It's not going to be overcrowded. It's conveniently located right off Nicholasville Road, not too far from the Fayette Mall. And what's great, they've got private training there. No awkward stairs, just guidance from dedicated trainers. Craft a personalized plan for your unique body and goals. I know my plan is going to be different than everybody else's plan. They will get you on the right path at Refocus Fitness. They'll get you refocused this new year. Go ahead, visit them at refocusfitness.com. Leave the gym anxiety behind, refocus your goals, and finally achieve the weight loss you deserve. Contact them today and experience the difference. A private gym built for success, not for crowds. Refocusfitness.com. I could have just peppered in with so many more questions too, where it's just so you flew in the Goodyear blimp. Was it good? I've just done the whole Paul McCartney type deal, but something happened today that we got to discuss.
You think?
There's been some crazy stuff that's happened while covering this football team. I've never been more shocked in my life. Shout out to Caveman Calipari, who posted that Yinzer was on his way out and somebody, a familiar name, is coming back, something like that. But they essentially were like, Eric Wolford returning. I thought this was Bagel McCoy telling us that Matthew Mitchell is going to replace Kyra Elsie in the middle of the year. I was just like, because normally, we hear stuff and then you ask people who actually know things. They tell you if it's crazy or not. And I was just like, this is so crazy. There's no way this could happen. 3 hours later, Eric Wolford's back. I don't know about you, Lucky. I still can't kind of wrap my head around it.
Mark Stoops is the Youngstown button. Yeah, it is kind of a little shocking. And they're going to eat Zach Ginter's extended contract.
$500 million.
600, yeah, over. I think $650.
Yeah,
okay.
$650. Yep.
He signed this extension a month ago.
Right after the Louisville game.
So 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So they're just really, really surprising development here. Now, I think you have to look. That's the real question here. The one you have to ask is, what does Wolford bring to the table? And I think the recruiting is that's the real differentiator.
Yes.
And more experience in college football as well. But the recruiting one is the big ticket item here. And even we saw what he did at Kentucky, but at Alabama he was doing a good job recruiting. he can get players. It's specifically for a room, Nick, that high school recruiting has been a big question mark. And like I think they've done some good things to where they're in an okay position right now. But it's going to be the same song and dance next offseason once the season ends. How do you replace potentially both tackles? How do you replace your center? And you were playing the portal game nonstop. They need to get out of that. I think Wolford can probably get them out of that due to some of the recruiting chops he has. But definitely a surprise. I mean, this, if you date back, Mark Stoops in that press conference when they announced he was I don't remember if it was Yinzer's introductory or what it was. He said, well, anybody could have coached that room. Something along those lines. So, like, they weren't super happy about how he left, but I'm sure they probably hugged it out eventually somewhere behind the scenes, and now the band's back together.
So, returns aren't unusual in this sport. We saw Bobby 2.0 for crying out loud, and even for Stoops' staff, right? But
Eddie Grant came back, for Christ's sakes.
Eddie Grant came back. And, like, at least in Eddie Grant's, you knew that Stoops still really liked Eddie, but he needed something new. And then Eddie took a different role, an off-the-field role. William Cohen, you kind of knew why he left. Super Bowl champs wanted him, right? Like, they kind of understood it. This was the opposite. And not only was it the opposite, it's that's the angriest collectively the coaching staff's ever been in a decade at any one human. I mean, whether part of why everybody was so vocal about, Wolford, it's because that's what people were telling us. Like, that was, and anybody who talked, we'd listen and they'd say the same thing. And that's what was so shocking about all of this. Now, I know it is a business, so at the end of the day, that matters more, right? And weird stuff happens. I don't think Wolf expected Nick Saban to retire. That throws a wrinkle in some things. I think maybe some fans were looking, well, maybe we might get some portal ads out of this. Don't think we expected the new offensive line coach reunion. And part of it, too, Luckett, is that I thought Yinzer did a good job last year. I've said it on this show previously. I've said it elsewhere. They made some significant improvements, and some of that was player-driven, right? Like, Jeremy Flax was never going to be a player as long as Eric Wolford was the coach here. Zach Yinzer made Jeremy Flax. He got invited to the Senior Bowl for crying out loud. Kentucky went from allowing the most sacks in Power 5 football and having a rush offense that ranked 107th to a top 25 rush offense in yards per carry and the third fewest allowed sacks in the SEC. That's good coaching, right? Now, the recruiting aspect of it for Yinzer, our friends on KS Board, he was probably public enemy number one for the recruitniks out there. Him and maybe another Youngstown guy. But that was a thing. That's just the part of me. I think the most shocking part, though, is just that I thought Yinzer did a good job coaching that group up. And while Wolford was at Alabama, he got some guys there. That wasn't an issue, but the execution was, particularly the last time we saw him on the field in the national championship game when snapping issues, some might say, cost them the game on that final play. That was persistent all year. So, yeah, I'm dumbfounded by all of this.
Yeah, just dating back to when we were prepping the Alabama-Kentucky game, their sack rate was absurdly high. And now some of that had to do with Jalen Milroe holding on to the ball so long. But they had issues in protection. Caden Proctor was a 5-star true freshman, started them for left tackle, really, really struggled. He's back at Iowa now. They had J.C. Latham, who's going to be a top 20 pick in the draft here in a couple months. And then Seth McLaughlin, the center, is at Ohio State now. So and Tyler Booker's going to be a high draft pick whenever he comes out. He was at guard. And so obviously they had talent and execution was an issue. So that's something you have to see what he can do. But you have to kind of give them benefit of the doubt. The O-line I don't think it was bad his first year here. They were a Joe Moore Award finalist. Luke Fortner moved to center, and he was a position coach that during all of that, right? And Luke Fortner turns himself into a third-round pick, an All-SEC player.
Multi-year starter in the NFL.
Yeah, Darian Kennard was a draft pick off that group.
First consensus All-American. Yeah.
Eli Cox played his best season when Wolford was here.
Yep.
So I think Kenneth Horsey had one of his best seasons when Wolford was here. And so he's done some good things. Different coaching style, like you pointed out, Nick, than Yinzer. That's the big one.
That's the biggest thing in all of this that I don't want to say I'm worried about, but they were going in the right direction, you felt like, on the offensive line. And you go from one style to the other style. In the other style, Wolford's just a hard ass. He's a screamer. He'll jump your ass at a moment's notice. He's very old school in that regard. Yinzer was the opposite. He worked with pros, much more laid back in that regard. So I mentioned Flax. Are there any Jeremy Flaxes out there that Kentucky's just not going to be able to get anything out of? And on the opposite, like, is this style what Jagger Burton needs to come out of it? Does he need somebody jumping his ass to unlock his potential? You know, it's a risk that Mark Stoops was willing to take.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I think their biggest problem right now in that room is just recruiting's a big problem for them, specifically high school recruiting. They can't get guys here. And so I think he helps fix that. And then you have Vince there to help too with guys in Ohio and local guys. And even Eric Wolford, he helped close on Keontae Goodwin.
Yeah.
When they were recruiting him. He helped close on Barian Brown, helped close on Deion Walker. So that's 3 high-profile recruits. 2 of them have turned out to be good players / potential. One's turned out to be a great player here. And so I think all that has a lot to do with it is just the recruiting. And then there's an established work relationship with the offensive coordinator. Liam Cohen's still employed by Kentucky. They worked well. And I go back, Nick, to the season. Cohen and Mark Stoops refused to give that offensive line props all year. Mm-hmm. And then after the season, we hear Cohen talk about we have to get back, or I don't know if this was before the Louisville game or when he said that, but we have to get back to being dominant, being able to move people at the point of attack. You do that by getting, I think, better players in here, or specifically high school, and not having to fix it in the portal. And play with a certain type of mindset. And I think they probably think Wolford is their best bet, and I think that's why they make the move. That's why you eat the $650, and I would assume he's probably going to make more than that, or right at it. I'll be interested to see the salary terms when they come out. Mm-hmm. But just a surprising development, but I think you look at it on a surface level, I think it makes some sense. I think some fans are upset about this, Nick, because you have to remember you have to go back and remember what it really was. And I don't necessarily think it was that he was recruiting for Alabama, whatever. Like, he was brought here to replace John Schlarman and the legacy he built. And he was a Youngstown guy. He knew Mark Stoops, had a relationship there. He knew what he was coming to. And he left that and really sent them on a downward spiral. And so that, I think, when you see some of the fans that are upset, I think that's a big reason for that. Took what was a strength of the program and it turned into a weakness really fast.
Yeah.
And so I'm very interested to see kind of what what's the press conference like?
Cool.
Like, what does he say there? That's the most interesting thing to me. But I think just from a football aspect, I think from coaching and talent accumulation, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring him back.
Cat fan said, "Is Nick going to be the first one to interview Wolf?" Hey, Wolford and I, we got along. I liked Wolf. He was great to me. Now, I'm one of the few he hasn't taken off social media, so happy about that. Scott asks, which is worse, Yinzer getting stiffed by Stoops or Wolf leaving in the middle of the night high and dry? I feel like people get fired all the time, so and he gets to walk with $650,000, so Probably
The
good.
timing for him does stink from the aspect of the carousel is already kind of dried up.
But he can go back to the NFL though. Like that carousel is just starting. You know.
But he's got 650K coming to him this
Mm-hmm.
year, and right, he could go back to the NFL. Like, what's his next move? He's gonna have to figure all of that out. But this is a results based business.
Mm-hmm.
And then in an off season where a lot of people were getting upset that that Kentucky was maybe being
Complacent.
too complacent or hanging their hat on maybe continuity. They're going out and they're making a swing here, and so we'll see how it plays out.
It's just so weird. It's like we're doing the reunion tour every year, just bringing another guy back.
So
Oh,
I
man.
mean, there's a lot. Mark Stoops has said in the past, I just don't hire people I know. I'll go outside my tree. Like the Brad White hire was an example of that. The Liam Cohen hire was an example of that. But there's a lot. It's very damn close to his nest. With you look at all the Youngstown guys. Most of them he probably knew in high school.
Yeah.
On the staff right now.
You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding. Another person in the chat brings up the chances that maybe old Clink comes on back to town.
One thing I would say there is he was the number 2 defensive coordinator. It's been reported that Jesse Minter, their defensive coordinator, is following Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. So, I mean, Steve Clinkscale could be the defensive play caller at Michigan. Like, he is in line to get that. And so, we'll see. If Chris Collins maybe got a job opportunity, maybe they try to make that happen. But I don't expect that to happen. But then again, I didn't expect this to happen, so who knows?
That's true. That's true. And my biggest thing was just with Michigan in general, when they're going to – I mean, Alabama had to go hire Washington's coach, who's never coached in the South before. Michigan is keeping pretty much everybody except Rick Minter's kid in the head coach. There might be a few more. Harbaugh might bring his kid, who was a special teams coordinator, Jay Harbaugh. But it feels like Clink will get a promotion, and and then you get to where a lot of they'll go for the continuity, right? Which here's my question for you, Luckett. We don't have a lot of these hires in college football. Marcus Freeman is one of the few. You see it more in basketball with them getting Kyle Neptune to replace Jay Wright, Hubert Davis for Roy Williams, John Shire for Coach K. This whole we're just going to keep it in the family sort of
Syracuse, Adrian Autry, Syracuse.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible for basketball. I understand it in this situation. Are you a fan of the keeping it in-house for the college football ranks and promoting from within?
I think it depends on the situation. I think for Michigan it makes a ton of sense. The thing with Sharon Moore is he's going to have that Harbaugh pipeline is wide open. When Jim was struggling, they just sent Mike McDonald down to help fix his defense, and that's when their run started. Now Mike McDonald has been a defensive coordinator through 2 playoff games. He's played C.J. Stroud and Joe Burrow, and he's given up 2 offensive touchdowns through 8 quarters.
It's pretty good.
So that pipeline is going to be wide open for them, and I think that's going to help Sharon Moore. So I just think it makes sense in that aspect, and he deserves it for stepping in and all that.
He coached. I mean, hell, half the games this year. And my other thing, at least with football too, I think it's less out of preservation, more about your identity. Who you are as a program. They can still be who they are with Sharon Moore. Which, by the way, if you look at all these NFL hires, what are they all trying to do? We're trying to find the next young hotshot. So, isn't that what Michigan's doing? It's just that guy so happens to be on their staff. Like, who else would they go out there to try to get? That would be like Sharon Moore is going to be on a lot of short lists for jobs elsewhere. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
and I also think for Bama, it was probably what they would have done. They just didn't have the assistants there to do it.
Right. It wasn't like they had Sark just waiting there, like they kind of hoped and planned for.
Right. Or if he retires 10 years earlier, they would have just had Kirby to promote.
Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy. There's a lot of moving and shaking. There's a lot happening in the recruiting world. Luckett's got a great big board of 2025 prospects on KSR Plus right now. Spoke to Spike Sal's junior day is next week. We'll save a little bit more of that recruiting talk for then, and this kind of madness kind of shook things up. But I wanted to get to the NFL playoffs because I have another question for you, Luckett. I know you love your Jamar Chase, right? He's pretty good. He's been fun to watch. Well, Joe Burrow is shelved with injury.
No, the answer is no. Before you even ask me the question.
Is there any part of you, while you're watching Panay
no,
that you regret taking Jamar Chase instead of Panay Sewell? You could have had Jamar Burrow all year if you just had a left tackle like Panay Sewell busting heads.
Yeah. Joe Burrow popping his calf was the reason for it was the right tackle's fault. No, stop, no. Nip it in the bud. No. Capital N, capital O, no.
Okay. All right. Are you going? Is T. Higgins going to walk?
He's going to get the tag. What that looks like?
You're going to run it back. Which I had to bring that up because Panay Sewell has become like all the offensive line guys that we follow on Twitter. They show what's his name at San Francisco.
No, he's awesome. He was a can't miss prospect coming out.
They show Sewell and they're just ass kicking constantly. And he's a great Dan Campbell player too, which it's a lot of fun. The Bucs were very pesky against the Lions, but I ultimately thought the better teams all won on Saturday. So my other question for you, Luckett, I was a dumbass going into this NFL playoffs, and you were part of the blame too. You convinced me that Patrick Mahomes he's finally got checks that his ass can't catch, and he's just still being Patrick Mahomes. So my question for you. I've been trying to beat him for 2 weeks in a row. I had a significant parlay that was just waiting there, and all the Bills had to do, Josh, make that damn throw in the end zone. Couldn't make it. I will say the Chiefs did. Like, that offense was the best it's looked all year against Buffalo, and that was maybe me being foolish enough for not seeing, like, oh, the Bills are all injured, so their defense isn't going to be as good. But so my question to you now, do I keep betting against Mahomes, or do I do the thing that any idiot in their right mind, like Patrick Mahomes in the points, just take Pat Mahomes in the points? You only get like 10 chances your whole life. Take Pat Mahomes in the points.
Yeah. Mahomes' dog record is spectacular. Lamar Jackson's record as a small favorite is also awesome. I think this is where it ends for the Chiefs. They only lose to AFC North teams in the playoffs. Finally, someone can join the Bengals.
You got to lock the Bengals in there.
But I think you're right. Dolphins, that was a weird game. The Dolphins limped in with a banged up defense. The Bills brought A.J. Klein off the street to play in that game at linebacker, and the Chiefs picked on him. I don't think that's going to happen Sunday in Baltimore. Baltimore will be able to, you're not going to completely stop Kansas City, but they will be able to slow them down. These Chiefs receivers, Nick, are still doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
So I like Baltimore here. I think Baltimore wins this unless Lamar just turns into a pumpkin in this game. Which
there's a chance.
He has underperformed in playoff games before, but I think this team is different. This Ravens team, they have the most, like, every team that has the amount of double-digit wins I think I've seen with them, they've all won the Super Bowl. And I think they have more than any in the last, up 10 years. They're a great team. One of the better teams we've seen in the last few years in the NFL. I think they handle their business. I think the scary game for them was last week, and they just steamrolled. And they just steamroll teams all year, especially at home. So I don't think they're going to steamroll the Chiefs. But what's that line, 3.5? I'm going to be laying it with Baltimore.
Our friends at FanDuel have the Ravens minus 3.5. Yeah. Totals 44.5. My favorite bet, and it was the easiest. I mean, I don't even think that I started watching the game when Lamar had his over on his longest run cashed. It was 16.5 last week. It's 17.5 this week. I'm going to take it because There's going to be a breakdown, and on top of that, I haven't kept up with the injury report, but the Chiefs did have a lot of defensive backs go down, including Kentucky's finest Mike Edwards.
They're starting left guard Joe Tooney is out. He's one of their better linemen, so that's gonna hurt them. I just think the Ravens overall are just better. They have a way better defense than the last two they saw. Miami and Buffalo didn't have bad defenses this year, but they were banged up in those games. I don't think that's going to happen with McDonald. I just mentioned the stat. I mean, he's been awesome all year, and he's going to make the Chiefs go down. He's not going to give up explosives like the Bills did. He's going to make them go down and earn it. I don't think you're going to see Kelsey running wide open towards the end zone against Baltimore on Sunday.
I mentioned our friends at FanDuel. You need to sign up for FanDuel. I've learned like it to just whenever they give you a no sweat single game parlay, just do it because they do it for every day of the NFL playoffs. It helped me because you don't have to use it on the NFL playoffs. I had a nice little ticket for the Cats, so here's $10. You can place your bet, and if it doesn't hit, you get another one. It's a great way to try to win big. FanDuel, it's a great place to make all of your wagers because Kentucky is legal here now. You can make all the props you want, whether it's sides, props, parlays, whatever it may be. FanDuel is the absolute best. And when you sign up with FanDuel.com/pigskin, promo code pigskin, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. 150 bonus bets guaranteed. Just head on over to FanDuel.com/pigskin. Sign up today. Must be 21 or present in Kentucky. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Here's another thing, too, like it, to remind our friends. We're going to do a special edition of Pigskin Preview for the Super Bowl. Those bonus bets expire 7 days after receipt. So don't think that you're going to hold over for the Super Bowl if you sign up this Sunday, right? Like, remember, there's a break in between. We got Pro Bowl, of course, but they'll have all of your props there. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sports book for a reason. And like I can't figure out, like, my heart wants the Lions to do well. And the thing I just got to keep telling myself is that the Niners aren't the team that we saw last week. And part of that is the weather. I didn't know it was going to be a bad weather game, so that threw me off. Brock Purdy, I can't. We've
seen him in some big spots, and we've seen him not play all too well. Cowboys last year in the playoffs, he didn't play well. There was a couple games regular season he didn't play. The Ravens game is a big one that sticked out. Even in the Bengals game, he had some bad turnovers. In some big spots, he has not performed well. And all those games I'm talking about are at home. So I think there's a chance. I just don't think the Lions are good enough on defense. I think that's probably what it comes down to in the secondary. I kind of like the over in this game. I know it's crazy. That's a super high number. But both these teams can go on offense. And the Lions are not going to be – that team will not be – that moment will not swallow them up. They will go there and play well. I think the Niners win. But I think we see – some points in bunches. I think the game probably comes down to which quarterback makes the big mistake in the second half. But I think the Niners are going to win, so I think it'll be Goff. I just think they have a better defense. But that's going to be a really fun game, I think, on Sunday afternoon. Or Sunday evening. Is that the night game? Yeah, I think that's – yeah.
Yeah, that's the second game. So Debo returned to practice. That's part of where I'm at is, like, he's a big part of what they do. So losing him, I'm sure, impacted where they put people, right? Like the game that Kyle Shanahan was calling. My thing with the Lions, if I'm going to take them, the reason why I might believe in them is because I don't think they've played their best game in the playoffs. It hasn't. That second half, they stunk against the Rams. They got tight. And their defense held on, and the Rams kind of they had some bad decisions there down the stretch. And then you had the missed field goal? Or no, they ended up punting away. The defense got the one stop, and that was a bizarre
Yeah,
decision.
McVay had the punt.
Yeah, he had some doorway brain there. But I have in my mind, and even against the Bucks, they had multiple chances to put them away and just wouldn't do it. So if you need to talk yourself into the Lions, like I might, just because let's see what kind of juice we can get on the money line. Like I think it's probably plus 360 or no, plus 290 on the money line. I could talk myself into it just knowing that the Lions haven't played their best game and they have a quarterback who's been in this moment before. People forget Jared Goff's won an NFC Championship game, right? And even though they were at home, it might even do them some good to be away from home. This is like the first time they've had no pressure. So,
They can win that game on Sunday.
Yeah. So I'll be cheering for them, although there's part of me that it's just like Kyle Shanahan's got to do this one time with these 49ers teams, right? Like
Yeah, the thing about the Niners to me is they're kind of due. Like they've paid their dues.
yeah.
It feels like it's time for them to get over the hump, and then you could have the rematch over a decade later. The last time they got this far with Ravens.
Turn the lights off at halftime?
Niners.
Yeah.
Yeah. They feel like they're due to me because they've been knocking on the door with Shanahan. And it feels like it's time for them. They've been aggressive going out and getting McCaffrey.
Yeah.
That roster's getting old, but it feels like it's time for them. But the Lions, they've just got all the mojo right now. And again, if that game's tight, they're going to think they're going to win it. And I think that if it's tight, they're going to have a really, really good chance, I think, at the fourth quarter. But I do worry about if their defense can get enough stops.
Feels like a live betting scenario where I'm pretty sure, too, our friends at FanDuel had a boost for all live bets on NFL games. So something to keep in mind on Sunday, because here's the other part, too. Like, one of those games is probably going to be a blowout. Another one's probably not, we rarely get both of them that are great games. So
yeah, like last year with the Niners-Eagles, you thought that was going to be an awesome game.
And then they get hurt. It's just
it was 1 versus 2, and then it was like, really, this is it?
Hopefully, we get treated to some great football, and we hope you've enjoyed joining us on 11 Personnel. It was a little different with our pal Roger Sherman. It was a lot of fun, just talking, going on the road. So you can follow him. He's at Roger on Twitter, which what a great handle. Like, he got on that early. But we enjoyed chatting with him. The Eric Wolford situation, just still can't believe it. It's gonna take a while to kind of get the brain, get the dials walked back in. Like, it's just weird. Whew. Just weird. Well,
yeah, that was. You want to talk about all-time curveballs, man? Expect the unexpected. College football. What a sport.
What a sport indeed. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to y'all tonight. For Adam Lockett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Crow Green.